Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to the Disconnected. I'm here with somebody that you may have seen in the comments on some of our streams, or maybe on his channel. This is the Fanatical Dragon, and this is kind of a big deal because this is a big face reveal. Everything from the Fanatical Dragon you've only ever seen from his elbows down, essentially, and his cat probably. But I am stoked to have you on this channel finally, and we are going to dive into collecting premium releases right after this. All right. So, first of all, let's just talk about regular collecting. How'd you get into collecting physical media to begin with?
Oh man, long time ago. But, well, first off, hello everybody, long time listener, first time caller. I think probably like movies and music would always be my kind of two things as a kid growing up.
Right.
And I think we're both of us slightly similar age. I maybe have you beat a little bit. I think
just maybe slowly.
A couple of years, but essentially started getting into the stuff when you couldn't really collect it, when it was back in the VHS rental days, and if you tried to buy a VHS tape from a rental store, it was going to be like $100 30-40 years ago. So there wasn't really a marketplace for it. And then as it evolved into kind of VHS collecting becoming a thing in, I guess, maybe the early 90s was when I kind of first started building up a collection. Wow. And then kept that going right up until the launch of DVD. I can remember consciously wanting to buy a DVD player to get the first Matrix movie when it came out on DVD. So that's probably tail end of the 90s.
Yeah.
And built up a pretty sizable collection by the time that we got into the early 2000s. When I was at uni, because I went to uni later in life, so worked a part-time job when I was at uni, and that was in a second-hand DVD and CD store. Nice. So then all of a sudden had incredible access to stuff and was able to get it cheap. And so I think I got at my largest point probably up to maybe about 3,000-4,000 titles.
Wow.
Mostly across DVD, still with a little bit of VHSs. And then moved to the States and sold absolutely everything. So cleared out almost everything I had and started from scratch again maybe about 6-7 years ago onto Blu-ray. So I still have a tiny smattering of some of my older DVDs, but pretty much everything that I have is largely on Blu-ray.
The HD upgrade has been tough for a lot of people, obviously, and that's purging those old ones and upgrading is fine for favorites, but a lot of people making that move is rough. But I think you and I have a similar thing where I moved across the country and sold everything to get here, so it was very convenient for me because I had tons of DVDs, and it was well, now that I've sold them, I may as well upgrade.
Yeah. And it didn't feel so bad because you had the benefit of hopefully you got an okay amount of money for your collection when you sold it. I think I sold it at the right sort of time where
nice.
I had some kind of rare stuff, so it helped me get to the States. I think I wouldn't have been able to buy the back and forth flights that I was having to do without selling that stuff.
Right.
I didn't feel too cheated in kind of losing out. And going into it the second time round, though, I've been a lot more I don't want to say kind of fussy, but a lot more selective with what I'm getting, and slightly more specializing in kind of one kind of area, but not entirely. I mean, my channel's largely a lot of East Asian cinema.
Yeah.
But because that's the bulk of what I collect. But I do still have bits and pieces of other stuff, like tiny smatterings of horror and tiny little bits and pieces of sci-fi. But I think it's mostly stuff that I've already seen. I'm not buying too many blind buys. A few, but for the vast majority is things that I know that I'm gonna like and I know that I'm gonna hang on to, and then just look around for more interesting or more intriguing versions of it. For the most part,
that makes sense. And yes, by all means, the link for Fanatical's channel is in the description below. Please go subscribe. He does some really nice deep dives into some things that a lot of other channels don't, and he spends some time really giving attention to some of these lesser known releases that we just kind of tend to glance over, and I think that's important for a lot of these. So East Asian cinema, why the big appreciation for that?
I've been into martial arts for a long time, so I did quite a lot of martial arts when I was a kid. Yep. Hurt myself really badly when I was about 21 21, 22, where it was maybe going to need surgery. So I think entirely my own fault, and not in. I'd love it if it was a more interesting story. Like if it was like, yeah, I was fighting 100 guys and I just came off something. But no, sadly, no, I was doing a martial art with a lot of gymnastics, and we were practicing outside of class. Like a group of us from class went and rented out a gym so we could try and get somersaults down. And I did a somersault, missed a mat completely, and just landed right on the base of my spine.
Oh, geez.
And totally messed me up for quite a long time. And so then moved to the States not too long after that. So just kind of fell out of actually regularly training. But I love of that type of cinema, particularly kind of action cinema and of kung fu and kind of some of the cheesier American action movies from the kind of the American Ninjas and some of the stuff that Vinegar Syndrome are bringing us now in glorious, lovely kind of special versions. So that sort of stuff, and then kind of got more and more into, I guess, Korean cinema when it started becoming more widely available.
Yeah.
Through kind of Tartan, would have been Tartan Asia Extreme, I think, back in the 2000s on DVD. And that kind of let me start dipping my toe into that side of things. Japanese cinema, not really until I was at film school. It was when I went to university, I went to film school, I did film photography. So that kind of gave me a chance to really start doing a little bit more of a deep dive in when I was studying and kind of look at more of the classics, so kind of Kurosawa and the big heavy hitters of Japan.
I've been very, very happy with the uptick in releases, primarily from Japan and Korea over the last couple of years, because they're getting a lot more attention, but also now we're getting these better releases that are akin to the more popular releases of elsewhere. So, you know, we're getting Criterion releases of some of these better films. We're getting, you know, the Shaw Brothers box set is right there behind you. We're getting stuff like that nobody really expected to get these beautiful releases, and I'm just. We're eating well right now is basically what I can get at.
So much, and even a finding that I think I was watching some of your older videos the last couple of days, and you have a beautiful kimchi version of The Nice Guys, and some of the Korean editions of some of the Korean editions of like Western movies are so good. They're kind of way up there with in some ways with the releases that we get in the UK and with you guys get in the States. So, and they're not. I'm having to import everything anyway if I'm getting stuff from the States. So there's no real difference in whether I'm getting something from that's coming out of Asia or whether I'm getting something that's coming out of America in terms of the shipping cost. Sometimes it might actually be slightly cheaper, depending on where it's coming from, to get it from Korea or from Japan.
That's true. And to fill in the blanks for some people, you are back in the UK now, right? Because the last thing we talked about, you were in the States.
Yeah, I should have said that I'm now kind of firmly resident in where I'm from originally, which is Scotland. So I'm kind of back in the capital. I'm in Edinburgh, in Scotland, which is, for those who maybe don't know Scotland, it's on the east coast. So we're at the cold side, the cold and windy side, and the nicer, kind of more warmer side of Scotland's the west coast, because that's the one that's closer to you guys. The west coast is closer to the Atlantic. We're on the other sea, the brutal sea. So Iceland and stuff closer to us. Really. So,
that makes sense. I'm super jealous. I've desperately always wanted to go visit over there at least, and I hope to someday. But really, one of the reasons to be jealous is you guys just have seemingly more access to some of these releases and titles over there. Let's get into some of these major releases. So when you talk about premiums, what do you use to define what a premium release is?
Not always just expense, though unfortunately that does sometimes go hand in hand. But for me, it's usually some sort of kind of extras, normally on the printed side. They generally have a lot less on-disc extras. I think the boutiques, so the 88 Films and the Arrows and the Eurekas and definitely Vinegar Syndromes, I kind of think of as being really good on-disc extras providers. So they're going out, they're sourcing their own kind of special features, and they're putting as much work as they can do into the quality of the restoration and everything that you'll find on the disc. The premium labels, a lot less of that, where you might find it's not necessarily a bare bones disc, but it's usually an identical disc to the one that you would get on a standard release, and they're kind of bumping up the kind of the desirability factor based on the printed extras, whether it's in a steel book, if they're kind of giving you a fancy book alongside, all that sort of stuff really is kind of the thing for me that differentiates the two.
So yeah, essentially it's usually exponentially better packaging is probably the best way to put it, because a standard release, you're looking at a Blu-ray case and a Blu-ray and a liner. That's it. Just some art. Now, with some of these others, he just mentioned this Nice Guys release. This is literally 3 copies of the same film with 3 different steelbooks in here with a picture frame and a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, here's the picture frame that came in that one. And they go all out on these because this is there's one of these. Okay, so this one, it's got a lenticular cover on here, and on the back you've got a little business card attached to it. They're all hand.
What those credit cards are for?
Just to show you that it's numbered, of course.
Sure.
And then it's got this really nice embossed steelbook on the inside, and then a booklet full of. Let's see. This one has a poster and then a full-blown booklet. Now, the funny thing, that is in here 3 times. One for each steelbook.
I do find one clicks a bit weird from that sort of point of view, and I think not every one of the companies does that style. Like, I think Mantalab and HD Zeta do that thing where if you buy the one click, they start giving you other stuff in some of the boxes, I think.
Yeah, this is an odd one for sure. For the people that don't know, this is from a company called Nova Media, and they are creative.
And that's Kimchi, isn't it, mate?
Oh, is it Kimchi?
Yeah.
Yep. They're because of the shelving, they're right next to each other, so I just confused myself for sure. This one is Nova Media. We'll talk about that one in a minute. And that's why I did it. Dang it! I pulled one from each company. That's what I was going to share, and I totally spaced myself. So yeah, it's called a one click because in one click you can get every version of the film that they're putting out. Because otherwise, you could just buy this one by itself, or this one by itself, or this one by itself. And so the way I view these as, for me, I'm only going to get something like this if it's a movie I truly love and want the best possible version for. Now, for this Nice Guys disc, it is literally just the studio disc. There's nothing special on it whatsoever. One clicks. Do you have many or any?
I think I've only got one, and it's not quite the same sort of style. And I got it pretty recently, but I think I did do an unboxing for this not that long ago. I can work it with my cameras mirrored. So this is from a company called MAG, who are based out of China, fairly new, and this is for District 9. So they class this as a one-click, but it's a slightly different style to the one that you've got there, where there's don't even get a steelbook. Literally, you just get a scannable version of the movie, and again, that's the regular disc that's inside most of the other releases of the film. It does have all the extras and stuff in English, which is nice, and that doesn't always happen with these releases, but it is a standard kind of international version. And then most of the kind of extra value for this is coming from the other stuff they put into it. So there's like a metal, it's not lenticular, but I need to work, my camera's mirrored, so I keep in the wrong direction. So a metal front, and then this strange, and they call it like a video viewer screen, where there's a little kind of section cut out in the middle of the box. It'll be hard to see this from the camera, but this is set up so that it focuses the closer that something gets to it. So if you can sort of see on my hand, but depending on what you put into the box, once you bring it close to the front, it'll kind of focus it. The idea being it's meant to mirror some of the themes of the film.
Right.
And they give you a weird assortment of stuff. So you get a lot of different art cards, like different character cards. There's about a dozen or so of those. Oh, again, wrong direction. I'm going to be doing that constantly. I already apologize in advance. And then the big draw for me of why I wanted to track this one down was a really nice kind of art of book, which is all in English, which again doesn't always happen, but this gives you, I think they've assembled this from a lot of different articles that were probably already out in the world. I don't think it's been created specifically for this release, but kind of gives you all of the work that Weta did for the movie in terms of their production sketches, takes you through costumes, takes you through all the character designs, through all the weapons designs, and the weapons in District 9. So unbelievably cool. Some of the stuff that they kind of made for Alien's tech, so you kind of get this incredible, I don't know if you can see, it's pretty bad, but tiny text, so there's so much crammed into that book as well.
even if that's just compiled from existing things, that is so rare for something like that to come out, where it's just this amalgamation of people's creations, probably from all over the world, for stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
A random arm patch, which I will probably never use, which is just like a Velcro. You could stick it onto like a Velcro if you have any
Nice
army style jacket. And then these two kind of really heavy, I don't think they're meant to be pins. I think they're kind of more like fridge magnets.
Oh, interesting.
You get get one of these out. These little kind of metal, but really substantial. God damn it, really substantial. These little things.
Wow.
And that's pretty much. So I think really nice set, and one that I had seen on the GroupBuy sites, but did not get through a GroupBuy site. So I got it pretty reasonably by getting it from it's a second-hand seller who had 10 of them. So I presume he bought 10 through one of the GroupBuy companies and then was selling them on. So it was nowhere near as expensive as the prices that I was seeing on the GroupBuy sites.
Dang, that's a lot. Still, that's awesome to be able to track that down, though. I kind of want to say there's a lot of companies doing this, but there's not too many. It's enough to really keep your eyes on them, but there's more than you think, because we only really hear about 2 or 3 usually. One of the other big ones, I'll share this one real quick, is UHD Club, and this is their release of Dunkirk, and this is you can see what's in here. I think I showed this one on the channel once before too, but it's just a nice 4K release of the film. Obviously, it's titled UHD Club. Everything is 4K that they put out. So in here we have this. I don't even remember what all is in here. So it is a 3-disc release, and then they again with the business card. Don't know why, but I've got a embossed business card. This is number 24 of 128, and then they have multiple lenticular art cards by themselves.
Oh, beautiful.
And then a nice booklet again. And I think in here, yes, there is another thing that opens up, and it's another set of posters and art cards, and I believe another frame as well. So they went all out, and this, just to show the difference on these boxes, this is how thick this box is alone for that movie. It is.
No one's making boxes as substantial as UHD. They're incredible.
Yeah, this is a ridiculous release. So for one film, this is going to take up a ton of space, first of all. But when it's a movie that I love and that I really want to see and really show that sort of appreciation for, sometimes it's worth it, I'll say.
I completely agree. The one thing, UHD Club, confusingly, not everything is 4K.
Right.
I've got, I think, 3 UHD Club releases. None of them have a 4K disc on them at all. But weirdly, they all have a space in them for an extra disc. So when you get the box through, it's missing. Like, you think that something's not been included in the set that you got.
I thought they were all supposed to be 4K. Okay.
No, because I'll show my UHD while we're doing UHD. So this is their wooden box version of Kung Fu Hustle, which is it's like the only wooden box thing that I have. Though I think they did a few different wooden box releases. Yep. That's kind of like velvet lined, and literally somebody has done a stellar job of kind of carpentry and wood lacquering and finishing duties on it. So it's like super shiny finish, and then inside comes with a magnetic little kind of wee digi, which I've ended up putting another copy of the film in because it had a slightly different audio track. But literally, just when it arrived to me, it was just literally like this. You kind of got the box thinking, wait a minute, there's something missing.
That one doesn't have a 4K release anywhere, right?
No, not so far. So whether they're intending that at some point they'll bring out just a 4K disc, or if someone else does, you can slot the disc in, then you get your extra little kind of wee booklet. I wouldn't take that one out because it's just a lot more printed materials. But yeah, their releases are stunning, but expensive. The stuff is really, really expensive, and they, for the most part, we tried to. Because UHD Club, another Chinese company, and my wife's from Canton in China, so it's quite easy or easier for us to try and get stuff direct from China.
Nice.
UHD Club will not sell to individuals, really. It's very, very hard. So UHD Club just direct everybody back to GroupBuy sites. So that's literally almost the only way to find them. There's about... On you go.
Oh, no, go right ahead.
I was going to say that there's maybe 2 or 3 retailers we found through... There's a great app, a kind of like almost like an eBay equivalent app in China that has predominantly all new items. It's not secondhand.
Wow.
And we found a couple of sellers on there that we were able to get UHD Club releases at the price that they sell for in China. And then we only had to pay for one set of shipping. So we can just ship it straight from China to Scotland, and it made it a lot cheaper than the group buy prices. But that's
very nice.
Difficult to do unless you can speak fluently Chinese, which thankfully my wife can. So I think other than that, there would be no way to track them down. So I picked up Fist of Legend that way, which is kind of another UHD Club, which was one that Media Cycles, again with their crazy solid hard boxes, and that is remastered but not 4K again. So that kind of, again, none of my UHDs with no 4K disc, but that's another movie with no 4K release so far.
So this is the whole hack of this video to learn, is just marry somebody who can speak a different language, specifically Cantonese or Mandarin or whatever, and really be able to get in there. That's awesome that you're able to do that.
Because it's staggering how many of those labels are in China.
Yeah.
Like UHD Club, Mantalab, HD Zeta are all kind of Chinese-based companies, and mostly releasing non-Chinese films. I mean, the couple I have slight exceptions, but the bulk of UHD Club releases are all Western movies.
Now I'm questioning. I don't even know if I have a Mantalab release. I did not grab anything from Mantalab. Interesting. I'll have to look at that.
Mantalab I found, because Mantalab you can order direct from, and they've got a pretty great website which will drive you insane, because every single thing that you see on the website, you're like, that looks so good, and always sold out, like perpetually sold out. So I don't know if they ever actually have anything live and available to order. The only time I've ever seen their items for actual sale somewhere is again through the GroupBuys sites or secondhand. Yeah. And I think I only have a couple of Manta releases, and they all came to me secondhand. So they're all things that I kind of got on the used market. Which is
that is the perfect transition, because some of these the reason why we wanted to talk about this today is because when you go to these sites and you see them all sold out, they sell out. I've seen one of these, they literally sold out in like 25 seconds for some of these releases. No, not a joke, not exaggerating, 25 seconds. And the reason they're able to do that is because of something that you've heard mentioned already today, and that is a group buy. Can you explain for everybody who maybe didn't watch my earlier video, what is a group buy?
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's really, I guess in some ways, like a very well-organized, well-run forum. Yep. With a kind of monetized front end. So you usually have to be, they're private forums, so generally you would have to sign up for an account to be able to get access to see what items they're going to be group buying. And instead of somebody going out and trying to buy one single copy, the group buy will allow that forum or that site, if you like, to buy multiples and then provide a copy in theory to everybody who signs up for that group buy. Not always. If it's a really popular title, they'll maybe sell a lot more spaces, or a lot more people will sign up to get it than they can get copies of. So it's normally first comes, first served. So once they announce they are getting a specific release, you put your name onto the list saying, I want that release, which is normally the point when you commit yourself to buying it, even though you largely won't know the cost at the time that you do that. So it is a path to walk with caution. Particularly the first couple of times, it's very easy to get carried away because there's some incredible releases on those sites. And my one single bit of advice would be, do them one at a time. Don't like, jump in there and think, oh my God, I'll sign up to 20 of these upcoming titles, because you make yourself bankrupt very quick.
The hard part with these that he's alluding to there is that often you will not know your final price until it is either about to be in your hand, or they finally receive the product and they're about to ship it to your house, and they go, hey, for us to ship it to you, we need the remaining balance. And perhaps you budgeted like $100 thinking, hey, that's pretty decent for this. Many times that's not even enough. So what happens on some of these is you'll put down a very small deposit, especially if you're a brand new member. And then by the time it's ready to ship to you and you've already claimed it and secured it, your name's on it, ready to go, you have to pay the rest. And sometimes that can be as much as like $250. So one that I got recently that I alluded to earlier is one of my favorites, and that is the Grindhouse One Click from Nova Media. This is still sealed, like we talked about in our messaging the other day, because I just saw this in the theaters. I've seen this many times over the years, but it's one of my favorites, and I really wanted it in the collection. This is a beautiful release of 2 movies. That was another one of the reasons that I justified it for myself. It wasn't just one film. So something like this is going to be fairly expensive if you go the group buy route. I think the deposit for something like this is like $50, $75, fairly small. But then the payment to get the rest is literally like another $200. And that's a lot for something like this. It's one item, and for a lot of people, that's too much. But on the other hand, it is, it's limited to 400 in the entire world.
And they do kind of hold their value. I mean, yes. I think Blu-rays generally, particularly when we're talking a lot about boutique and the premium labels, they do kind of hold their value a lot more than, say, a normal release that you maybe pay $50, $20 for, that you might get 2 if you were trading in or if you're selling.
Right.
The kind of the premium stuff does hold its value a bit more, but usually if you keep it sealed. So that's why you see so many on the second-hand market that are still sealed.
Right.
That's the only way to guarantee you could get back close to what you paid for it.
And they do a wide range of films, so no matter what you're interested, you can usually find one. But as we just said, if you do go onto these sites, I strongly suggest just choose one and wait to have it in hand to feel the entire process before you go again. Don't even go again once you've paid for it in full. Wait till it's in hand. Make sure you're happy with it before you go for that second route, because these get a little crazy.
Yes, as I learned the hard way on the first one that I got. I showed you just before we started recording, but my first one out the gate was this, which is the, now this is from, I think, from WCL, M-Life. So M-Life have kind of like 2 or 3 sub-labels. So Destino, M-Life, and WCL, which is, I think, it's World Cinema Library, are kind of all under the same banner. Another Chinese label. And this is a release of a Chinese kind of live action / animation CGI kind of spectacular called The Writer's Odyssey, which is great. It's a very, very good movie, and if you've not seen The Writer's Odyssey, I'd encourage you to do so. This version of it, though, is insane, and the reason it was so expensive is because of the weight. I mean, you could...
It's so big.
This is 2 of these, and Flip could bench them the way that he normally does his huge weights that boy lifts. But inside here, I'll show you this quickly because it is pretty spectacular. But I think the retail price on this was about $80 to $90 if you were buying it in China equivalent. And I think I ended up paying £220, so about $250 for it, because it had to be shipped to the States and then shipped here, and it weighs probably the same as a small dog. Inside you had these 4 little kind of wee digibooks with different versions of the movie. So there's a few different cuts. There's a bonus features disc. Bonus features on this one, though, all in Chinese. But the big draw, really, and the big weight building thing was these 3 books. So I think the first is a storyboard book. And if you like kind of production of movies, this is basically storyboards for the entire film from beginning to end. So you can see the storyboard of the director's notes. And then, again, similar to what we saw with District 9, there's a book showing all of the different environments, the kind of character designs, and it's a pretty thick book.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's a third book, which I think this was specifically produced for the set. The director had been quite involved. And this one is all kind of individual, beautifully realized photograph of all the cast in and out of costume, and then all of your different kind of character designs.
So cool.
Creatures. And then right down to individual weapons or individual handheld items that they would have had to render for the CG environments and stuff. There's a lot to it. So I mean, it didn't feel so much like I was paying like that amount of money for something that you could get anywhere. It does feel quite special, but lesson learned, because that was my first time out the gate. It was like, okay, this is an area to tread carefully.
Right. So, I mean, that is a really good time to bring up too, how hard these can be to get. So in your vast knowledge that you also have, I'm curious, do you have any insight why you think they're mostly based out of Asia for these sort of premiums?
Those labels. I think probably because of the size of the market there. I mean, I think in as much as we're all in our own little echo chamber of people who love physical media, and Third Window's, your interview with Third Window reminded me of the fact that sometimes selling 1,000 copies for them is hard. Right. when we're seeing so many of these box sets that are coming out that say they're limited to like 700 or 1,000, there's probably not that many more than 700 or 1,000 buying those individual specific releases. Right. And China's such a huge market. So in percentage-wise, and as much as there's a diminishing amount of people in the US and in the UK still buying physical media, it's an even smaller number in China, but there's so many people in China that I think those companies are able to sort of make a decent living, presumably by making these sort of bespoke fancy editions. And I think largely the reason that they're focused, particularly for UHD Club and for Mantle Lab, why they're so focused on Western films is because they're basically giving a really nice fancy version of a Western film to the Chinese audience. So I'll always have Chinese subs on there. Sometimes, occasionally, China doesn't really do overdubs the same sort of way, so they don't generally tend to dub American or Western films into Chinese that often. So it's usually just a Chinese subtitle track on there. So for Westerners' point of view, it makes these sets really appealing because you can understand everything, usually right down to the special features if it's a Western movie.
Yeah, that is very true. And one of the cool things is the Asian films that they put out too, a lot of times because they understand that they're doing this not necessarily for a global market, but they have kind of this global customer base. A lot of them are subbed in English, which is fairly rare for some of these other releases. So it's made it appealing. Like I have the, I think this is Nova as well. Fortune Star. I think that's a sub-label of Nova Media, but it's the Chinese Ghost Story trilogy. And
is Nova. Fortune Star aren't a sub of Nova. The Fortune Stars, you know, Golden Harvest. Golden Harvest put out most of Golden Harvest's back catalogue were bought by Fortune Star. Fortune Star are a Hong Kong-based distribution company, so they're the ones that are doing the remastering that's ending up on all the Eureka and in some cases the Criterion releases.
Yeah, so that one, it's a hard trilogy to find. I don't think there's another Blu-ray release for those in the US.
No, not in the States.
So to get that with English subs is a huge find, to be able to get that.
There's a beautiful UHD club release of that as well, but it's too crazy expensive. The version you have is the one that I would suggest people go for.
It's the sweet spot.
Yeah. And Nova everybody loves, but I'm very jealous of my American friends for having a Barnes & Noble 50% off Criterion sale twice a year. Nova Media also, thankfully, do something similar. So usually for all of December, which is a kind of holiday month in Korea, they call it Winter Festival, they do 50% off, not across their entire catalogue, but a good chunk of it. So it's a great time if you can be patient and you can sort of save up a little bit of money through the other months of the year and kind of splurge come December time. It's a great time to pick up Nova Media releases.
The hard part is a lot of the stuff is out of stock by then. So you will get, it's kind of like the sloppy second sale, but some of it, like this is an astounding great release. And I think during the Winter Harvest, this was like $30 or Winter Festival, not Winter Harvest. And the hardest part then is shipping. Shipping is still expensive, but it is a completely different world to try to explain that because they have, oh gosh, do you remember the phrase they use on there? It's like value pack shipping or something where it can only go up to, I think it's under 2 kilos.
Yeah, I think so. And then after that, you go up into the next sort of tier or the next bracket, which is a huge jump. It's like the difference between like maybe sort of $30 up to like $70 just for your shipping fee.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is worth it to pay attention to the sales. GroupBuys, they can be a completely different beast, but they are, again, if it's worth it to you, it's worth it to you. No, I would hope nobody would shame you for some of these. They do great products. They do great releases. The packaging alone is worth it for a lot of these. So why would anybody else want to get into GroupBuys in your opinion? Is there something that you would pitch them to others? GroupBuys specifically.
I think it's a very good way of kind of keeping abreast of everything that's coming out, because that's almost, as you will well know, trying to keep up to date with news can almost feel like a full-time job sometimes. If you're having to jump in between all the different manufacturers' websites, trying to go onto the forums, trying to kind of keep abreast of different releases from different places, it's really hard. And Media Cycles do a really good job of, they've got an Instagram feed, so even if you're not necessarily planning on buying from them, it's worth following at least their Instagram, because you'll see not just the super fancy Chinese releases like we've been speaking about, but they also make it easier for people in the States to get Zavi special editions or limited editions and that come out just in the UK.
Yep.
They'll import them across the States, and vice versa for us. So I think you guys get Target and you get Walmart exclusives quite a lot, which we don't have Target, we don't have Walmart. So those can sometimes be really tricky for us to get, and they're not quite premium releases in the way that some of the other ones we've been talking about, but they're still often really desirable, and that's a really good way of getting a few bits and pieces like that together. I used them for a couple of Steelbook exclusives from Target, and it was an easy way of getting 2 or 3 together, and the shipping costs could be spread across those 2 or 3. And they just waited until they had them all together and then sent them in one go. So
it does seem the most popular thing on there is Steelbooks, and for the most part, a lot of these. The other one is Best Buy exclusives. They get a lot of exclusives in the US that are never available in the UK. So when they're $35 here, it appears they end up around 45-ish to people in the UK, which in the grand scheme of things, that's not that bad considering it does exist there.
Yeah, and it's still cheaper than either buying it secondhand. Though I am finding increasingly that I think partly because of the success of Psychos, there's some retailers, kind of independent retailers in the States, probably just a guy with an eBay store, I suspect, who are starting to then make it their business to go to Walmart, to Best Buy, buying multiples, and then just selling themselves. So that can sometimes work out a lot cheaper. So do you always jump around and sort of price check against kind of eBay? So I know that you'd loved Everything Everywhere All at Once. So that was a version that I desperately wanted to get. That's much nicer artwork than the one that we got over here. And that was basically, I got this for exactly the price that it would have sold for in Walmart. I think it's a Walmart exclusive.
Yeah.
I got it for the Walmart price, just plus shipping. So
wow.
They literally can't really have made any profit on it at all. So
that's awesome.
That was eBay. Just fancy, but it's a nice version.
Great film. The other thing I want to talk about, which I'm gonna kind of spring on you here, but the other forms of premium releases, the other big one that I wanted to talk about, because we don't have, first of all, we don't have any premium retailers in the States. We don't have anybody that's doing anything more than maybe like Vinegar Syndrome at their highest, or Severin. Those are basically like the peak on the packaging. I'm hoping that someday we get somebody to do media books at the very least. And media books are wildly popular out of Germany, of all places. And there are thousands of these that you can get in Germany. And for those that haven't seen a media book, for this one, you got a disc in the front, a disc in the back, and then an actual book in the middle with all kinds of writing. The hard part, it's all in German. So for me to read this, I got to use Google Lens on my iPhone and hold it up so I can translate it one sentence at a time. Yeah,
but it's kind of cool that we're living in an age where at least we can use Google to translate.
Oh yeah,
we don't have to go out and learn German, which I think was the old style way. 10 years ago, we would have both been having to kind of get out the German dictionary and do it even slower.
Oh
but
yeah,
it's crazy how they've really dived into. They're sometimes DVD sized.
Yep.
They're not always the same, but I'm a big fan of them too. I don't have an enormous amount, but for 88 Films fans, people who really like Kung Fu Bob O'Brien, who does the artwork, Kung Fu Bob has done quite a lot of work for a couple of German labels. So there's a really small group called the Vengeance Pack. I don't know if you've looked at any Vengeance Pack releases.
Just the one that Flip got and shared on the other channel.
I think he got the Golden Mask. Yeah. Yep. They do some Shaw Brothers releases and then some sort of like Shaw's adjacent releases. So Taiwanese films that starred quite a few of the Shaw Brothers actors. The budget's sometimes a bit lower, but they would kind of get in an artist like Bob to do the releases. They're very low runs, so they're normally about they'll do normally 3 or 4 different cover options and do usually about 330 or 333 with German precision versions of each copy. So that was a version of Enter the Game,
nice.
Which is a kind of Bruceploitation, largely a kind of a knockoff of Game of Death, or the last section of Game of Death, starring one of the many Bruce Lees, the not the Bruce Lees, but with Kung Fu Bob cover art. And then I think normally if you get in there quite early, they gave you you get like a poster as well. But as Ryan says, you always get usually 2 discs. So in this case, it's a Blu-ray and a DVD, and then you get your German text and a lot of photos. And then they'll give you, I think, almost all of their media books come with a poster, which normally just replicates the art in a
Wow,
quite.
that's cool though. I mean, Kung Fu Bob art is great.
Yeah, he's a very, very nice dude. I don't know if he's definitely someone that at some point you should try and pull on for a chat, because Bob is a sweetheart of a man. He's very, very nice. He's been very kind to me since I've had the channel.
He is on the list for sure. I would love to have him on here.
He's really
these media books, there are other reasons to get them as well, because it is not in the States. So there are other ways that they are able to sort of finagle some of the rights and get rights to some cuts that we don't have. The biggest example is just recently they put out Black Christmas 2006 on one of the German media book labels. And it's the first time ever it's been uncut on Blu-ray, which a really cool deal that we're finally able to get that in HD. And it's a great cast, and a lot of people are rediscovering that film because it just doesn't have wide circulation.
They're great, and a lot of times they'll be doing remastering as well. So I think the quality of the releases is generally really good. Sometimes you do have to, don't always assume that every single one's going to have English subs. I have quite a few that don't, but it's easy enough to swap out, to buy a kind of local disc and just keep it an extra in the book, or just swap out one of the main discs. But yeah, then they're sometimes quite cost effective too. They're not as expensive as some of the other releases we've been talking about. It's not hundreds and hundreds of dollars for the media books normally. And do you normally, are you going straight through Amazon Germany? Do you go to Amazon DE or?
No, we got a couple retailers in the States, Diabolic DVD, I'm sure you've heard mentioned, and Orbit DVD. They've both kind of been focusing on them more than they used to, and it's leading to they'll, unfortunately it's not cheap, but they will out of nowhere, they'll drop like, hey, we just got these 20 media books in. So you'll look through and you're like, well, I want 11 of them and I can't afford, maybe 3. So you have to really pick and choose and be selective unless you do go directly. But again, like this one that I held up, this one is limited to again 333 of this exact cover. So because of that, they get rare very quickly, and some people are either they want the entire set of one film or they want a specific artwork. So these ones, they tend to inflate in price pretty quickly on the secondhand market, at least in the States. So while this I think was like $30 brand new, which is great for a really good film and nice premium packaging, some of them are worth like $100 out of nowhere.
What's shipping like for you from? Have you ever brought anything across from Amazon in Germany?
Yeah, a couple times. For the most part, US dollars, it's usually less than about 15.
Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not terrible. Unfortunately, the quality of Amazon shipping leaves a lot to be desired.
Well, there's a third-party company. If you can look, I don't know if I haven't found a way to search by specific marketplace retailer yet, but there's a German-based, I think they're internet only. I don't think they have brick and mortar stores, but they're called Media Mops.
Yep.
And they are incredible in terms of people trade in stuff to them. I think we've got a couple of companies similar in the UK. Music Magpie is probably the biggest one over here, where people you can scan stuff by the barcode with your phone, send them a big massive box of stuff. They'll pay you very little, and then it goes into this sort of trough of secondhand goods. But because they're a German label, they get a huge amount of media books, and they're really cheap. Like if I can duck off camera for 2 seconds.
Yeah, interesting. Oh, and I see you've got the Japanese exclusive Lighthouse release back there.
I do.
That's a nice release.
We'll talk about that in a second, because that was a quite affordable, nice special edition. So this is I think this was £7, so that's about $10. And this is Kim Ji-woon's incredible.
That's such a fun movie.
So much fun. It's great. The good, the bad, and the weird. I think there's a couple of different media books of this. There's a media book of A Bittersweet Life, which comes with this movie as a bonus, but no English subs on the disc at all. So I ended up having to swap out. That's why it's got a slightly different disc here. That's the regular British disc with not quite as nice on-disc art. But that is a 3 disc, so it's the Blu-ray, a bonus disc, and then I think a soundtrack disc as well at the back.
Wow.
And then a book, which is all really largely photo-based, with these great wanted poster style.
That's fantastic.
And really, really cheap. It was kind of quite a surprising find. So that was all Media Mops. So
wow, I will have to look that up. Yeah,
I think they might. I'll do some checking for you as well, because I think I'm sure someone told me they have their own standalone website as well, so you don't necessarily have to go through Amazon.
Interesting. And sometimes on Amazon, if you find a product from the seller, you can click the store name and
Yeah.
it'll say other items from the seller. So I will have to keep an eye out for that. That's fantastic. I haven't been on Amazon Germany in quite some time. It's been better with Orbit and Diabolic getting primarily like the popular ones in, but there's an unknown number of options out there, and that's the hard part. Is they'll put out some obscure, like the Entity that a handful of labels have released the Entity from the 80s, but they'll put out 6 covers and give it just this beautiful treatment, and all of a sudden you're like, I don't love the Entity, but now I want them all because they're gorgeous.
Yeah, that's how they get you. I think that there's that kind of what they call it, fear of missing out kind of factor that catches us all. But I think it's good to kind of try and keep yourself in check a little bit, because partly through I don't have an endless budget, but I do find by being a little bit more kind of niche sometimes, so I will go for Bob's art, and that makes it really easy to decide which version, particularly for the media books. So you just go for the version that has Bob's artwork. But also don't be afraid to kind of Frankenstein things. So you don't have to always get every single version to end up with a version that's quite unique. So we spoke briefly about Mantelab, and this feels like a good juncture to show you this. So I only have 2 Mantelab kind of releases, and I can't really officially count this as one. So this was the one-click box for Mantelab's release of Tenet, which I bought as an empty box for I think about £15, and then just filled with other releases that I had of Tenet. It's kind of become my one-off. This is the only version that's quite like this in the world. So it has, inside it, I have I think this is an HD Zeta steelbook, which I haven't opened yet because I already have a steelbook of it. So that's part of what would have been a different manufacturer, HD Zeta's one-click.
Right.
And then I have a surround from an HMV exclusive. So that's just the slipcase and booklet from the standard HMV 4K, because they had a 50% off sale. So that was like
nice.
With a really nice photo book, which is different to the one that would come in that Mantelab release. Then I have my original steelbook, which I got ages ago. So I ended up making my own version. And
smart.
For me, I'm quite happy. So it's not the £300 or £400 now, I think, if you try and buy a one-click version of Tenet. I think that whole thing maybe cost me less than £50, so maybe $50, $60 in total for all the different versions. And there's no hard rule that says you absolutely have to stick to that one thing. And I think a collection's more interesting when it's a bit more unique. And when
I agree.
So I think try not to get too caught up with, and going on to media cycles, it's probably a good point for us to say as a cautionary point, don't get caught up with trying to keep up with the Joneses on those sites, because you will see people who have the bank balances to buy every single release.
Which is scary when you think about it, because literally when you're getting a lot of these, especially when you're getting it a one-off, after shipping, the average is probably $175-ish, maybe slightly higher now with the pandemic raising everything over the last few years. Shipping has sadly increased for most places. It is not easy. It is not cheap. But if it's a movie you love, it can certainly be worth it.
And I think that has to be the main, always lead with movie, don't lead with label. So I think it's probably the better rule of thumb, don't you think? So
absolutely.
You can get, because it's good to jump around with whichever version of that film that you like, more than thinking I need to get every single release that comes out. Or if there's some labels you maybe can do that with. I know that people have the subscription to Vinegar Syndrome and stuff. Don't try and do that with UHD Club or with Mantelab. Don't be like, I need every single one, because they number them too, I think. I'm pretty sure. And that could get, you'd have to sell, or that's basically a house amount of money that you would end up pouring into that collection.
Well, this is a good time to transfer to probably the last thing about these is you and I kind of messaged back and forth about the elitism that comes through some of these group buys and collecting around premiums, and what are some of your experiences with viewing others we'll just say behaving badly.
I think as a label, the probably the worst for it in terms of being driven from the label itself are UHD Club. So in order to buy direct from UHD, so if we put what we've said about media cycles to one side, if you wanted to just deal straight direct with UHD Club in China, you basically have to buy every single release that they have coming out to be eligible to join, almost like a lottery scheme, to become one of their VIPs. And they only sell to their VIPs at this point. So that they are kind of enforcing that as almost like I think as a business model. So they make it kind of incredibly hard for people to buy. But I think on the forums, I mean, the oldest forum that this is most guilty of is certainly the Criterion forum. If you go into the Criterion forum, you will see an awful lot of the kind of the film equivalent of like audiophiles, I guess, the self-proclaimed cinephiles. And we're all here because we love movies, and I think they just like to feel that they love movies just that little bit more, or they understand them in a way that you don't. And there's a little bit of that with a couple of the labels that's sometimes just a bit, I don't know, it turns me off a little bit.
I agree. That's one of the things I talk about on here often. Because the Criterion sale is happening in July, and we're recording this in July, I put out a video, probably 2 weeks ago, that said, here's like 9 or 10 Criterion releases to avoid because they have better releases elsewhere. Yeah. But it brought out the Criterion fans in the comments like crazy. I actually had somebody comment, Vinegar Syndrome would not exist if Criterion did not step forward first. And I have to wonder, like, how do you align yourself so much with one label to get to the point where you think no other label could possibly exist without Criterion?
I mean, they do have a couple of firsts. To kind of give credit where it's due, my first commentary track ever recorded was for a Criterion. Wasn't it King Kong? I
believe so, something like that.
First ever one. But they're just a label, and I think they're questionable in terms of some of the releases over the last couple of years, and they have a tendency, they know their market, and their market is a little bit more art house than I'm comfortable being most of the time.
Right.
So I find I'm maybe about 2 releases a year from Criterion that I get super excited about. The last one was Okja. I was like, great, they're releasing Okja. But I think they seem to kind of do elicit that kind of less of a fan, more of a cultist sort of mentality among a certain group of fans. That's by no means everybody, and I don't want to be a hypocrite. I've got a bunch of Criterions and I love them dearly, but I don't feel like I'm living or dying by Criterion in that sort of sense. And I think Vinegar Syndrome have a little bit of that too, whether there's some people
at this point, I'd almost say every label has some people like that. Arrow Videos got their fair share of them. Vinegar Syndrome has tons. Severin has quite a few. Other than something like a Mill Creek, pretty much those type of labels are the only ones that really don't have diehard fans like that, at least that aren't vocal. But it happens quickly, and it can really sour it for a lot of people.
It's pretty crazy, and I think it's good to be. I mean, God, Fanatical is in my name, so I'm no stranger to being a big fan of stuff. And I think it should always be encouraged to kind of get something, be into the things that you're into, but it doesn't mean that other things that you're not into are somehow inferior. And it always reminds me a little bit of like the weird, partly media-driven rivalries that they feel that they have to introduce. I mean, at one point it was Mac v PC, another point it was Biggie v Tupac, another point RV Oasis, and now it's Arrow now it's 88 versus Vinegar Syndrome. To bring us up to date with them both having a version of Righting Wrongs coming out. And it's strange how people feel that it's almost like an imaginary lines being drawn in the sand for some of them, and they feel you have to take a stand. You really don't. It's like there's no obligation to buy both. Buy the one that's easier and or cheaper for you to get your hands on. I would say it was generally probably the best rule of thumb. And if it's a film you absolutely love, nothing's stopping you from getting both. But it doesn't, it's not a bad thing if somebody's not into the label that you're into in exactly the same way that you're into it.
Exactly.
At the end of the world.
Is there anything else about premiums that you wanted to share with everybody?
A couple of, because there's a couple of ones that we didn't get a chance to mention, and I feel that I would be remiss if I didn't talk about them, because there's a great label called Film Arena. I think, I don't know for definite, but I think they're somewhere in the European blocks. I think maybe in Poland. I think people can maybe let us know in the comments down below. Their website certainly seems like the prices are all in Polish, but they do really, really, really nice, very English friendly releases of mostly Western movies. So this is their kind of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. I'm a big Chris McQuarrie fan, so I think when he got involved in the Mission Impossible kind of franchise, Chris McQuarrie, the writer of Usual Suspects. and then went on to have a great career as a writer. And in more recent years, he's been directing too. He directed Way of the Gun, and then from then on, he's done some great movies. I think the first Jack Reacher as well, I'm sure he directed too.
I think so, yeah.
A really nice addition, and they're quite, as far as these type of releases go, they're quite cost effective. So you can find them in the secondhand market really easily. They're not super low numbers. I think they're 2,000 runs, which for these type of releases is a little bit higher than you normally get.
Right.
And they're really well produced, so you normally kind of get a book, which is usually always English friendly. They're generally always kind of photo-based books rather than photos and text.
Nice.
You'll get character cards, and then normally they'll do the lenticular thing, but as a slide-off magnet, so you can. And sometimes they'll give you 2 or 3 of these things. So I've got a couple of those, which, if we're doing this sort of chat again, I'll bring a few more to the party next. I really, really like Film Arena. I think that they've got a great release of Dread, and a couple of great releases of a few of the Marvel movies. So I'm not a massive Marvel movie fan, but their releases of Deadpool, very, very cool. And multiple.
I would be really remiss if I didn't bring up Everything Blue. They used to be out of the UK. They were incredible, and they got bought by somebody, right?
No, I think they ended up, somebody headhunted their entire team, because they're still weirdly active. Like, in a way, they're still kind of posting quite a lot, but they're posting about other releases. So I think that entire team worked on the Rambo. There's a Rambo kind of First Blood release coming out pretty soon that looks absolutely. I think that's them. I think in their new incarnation, but I spotted you've got some of Edgar Wright's glorious. I think I've only got Black Klansman from them at the moment.
Yeah, I've got the 3 from the Cornetto trilogy. That's all I've had. I think I had one more, and I traded somebody that one for something else. But yeah, Everything Blue was fantastic, really high quality. Again, very similar to some of these other releases. Where it's just this massive collection of goodies. They'd give a poster with everyone. They'd put like a pin in there. You'd get art cards. You get a frame. It was just above and beyond incredible.
And those Edgar Wright films, the on-disc extras for those were incredible. I think a couple of commentaries with Quentin Tarantino. He's a kind of big friend of Edgar Wright's. I'm sure he does commentary. Really, really good extras. They're incredible films. Jumping to the other end of the spectrum in a little bit is a label that I don't hear enough people talking about, and at the moment I'm trying to use every opportunity to try and push people, which is Raven Banner.
Wow, interesting.
Canadian label. I managed to get this before it went out of stock from them, which is the Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Yeah,
really very cool little film by the
guy. Good movie.
Troll Hunter. They seem to have a sale on most of the time. Like anytime I check their website. Have you got it too?
I'm trying to reach for a couple.
Cool. Please, Dad. I'd love to see what you have.
So I will match that one. And then, I also have Victor Crowley from them.
Oh, awesome.
And then the one that got them on the map for everybody, I'll hold that one for last, but they had an alternate cover for Deathgasm. This is the Australian black metal horror film. But the big one, everybody knows, the Hunky Boy edition of Psycho Gorman. Yes. This is the one that made them semi-well known because it sold out very quickly. And I think they did 1,000 of this. But this release, just great. It is 3 discs. They've got baseball cards from the characters in here. They've got a fake advertisement for merch from the film and art on the opposite side. Really nice slip case. Not quite a full-on premium, but definitely a big step up. And
quite affordable. I find they're generally pretty reasonable. And I think they're just about to do a re-release of The Sadness, the Taiwanese crazy zombie movie, because that's a Canadian director, I think, weirdly. Canadian director kind of made it across it. So, and it's the one that looks like it has the best extras. There's a couple of really nice German releases of that too, but the extra is not English friendly. So I think last time I checked the website, it was half price. So if anyone wants The Sadness, then get the Raven Banner version, because it looks really good, and they're re-releasing it pretty soon.
Yeah, and it'll be probably released in the States this fall, I'm assuming, by RLJE, but that Raven Banner is still going to be the better release, I guarantee it.
They're really cool. They seem like a nice bunch of people. Shipping's really good.
Oh, really well
packed, well protected.
And I mentioned Orbit DVD earlier. They've been getting Raven Banner releases in every so often, so it might be better if you are wanting to save a little bit on shipping. Let them eat the shipping cost as they get it on a pallet, and not you getting 2 movies at once and it costs $20 to import.
Weirdly, our exchange rate's slightly better against Canadian dollar than it is against US dollar just now. So I find that buying straight from Canada is not too bad for me at the moment.
Nice.
I used Diabolic a couple of times. I used them for the Arrow. Some of the Arrow re-releases of the Eureka titles when Arrow brought a boxer that I got through Diabolic, I think, if memory serves.
Very nice.
Because we can't buy direct from the Arrow store in the US from over here.
Which is ridiculous.
The only things that I looked out to see. The other one was I did pull out, but I think you've already seen it, which was that's jumping back to Man's Lab, which was
beautiful. Yeah.
I have a video up for that. If anybody wants to see that, jump over and watch the video. And my last one that I pulled out was just when we were talking about weird store exclusives. And I think this is it's maybe a Best Buy or you probably know better than I will. This is the Ben Gesserit Pain Box edition of June. So kind of in this kind of, it's the lightest thing I've ever encountered in my life. It's hard. I wish I had a set of scales because this must weigh about 4 grams. There's nothing to it at all. I thought when they sent it to me that they'd like not included the disc inside it. But it's literally just a cardboard box. It's not really that well made.
Wow.
A box that you can put in and pretend that you're Timothée Chalamet. And it's just the regular release inside here. But that was a nice exclusive. And bring us back to Everything Blue. I spotted that they were weirdly advertising this exact same version, but being released in France later this year. But it looks like it's the same packaging. They're just working their way around the countries. So again, I think it is possible to, as much as we've spoken about some really, truly horrifically expensive things, it doesn't have to be that, in terms of that there is a way of getting slightly more unusual things without breaking the bank.
One last company I will throw out there, which it seems to be getting a little more popular. They put out a release of Terrifier, the little indie horror film, and that kind of got them some attention. I believe they're out of Italy, if I remember right, and it's Cinemuseum. I don't know how to say it. I've never heard anybody say it out loud. CINE Museum, and they do same thing. Basically, probably the most similar is something like UHD Club, where it's actually it's probably more akin to like the old Everything Blue. Actually, it's one box, one copy of the film, and then just all kinds of really great packaged goods on the inside, just to make it just the best possible release of the film. And they're not super cheap, but they're not exorbitantly expensive, somewhere around like $100, and it's a really good package if it's a film that you love.
They're an interesting group because I think they sell a few other people's releases too. So if you go into their website, you see their own titles that they've made, but then they also they kind of pull together some of the other labels. So it's kind of an extra option for those people who don't want to go down the GroupBuy route. You can kind of find some of the stuff that would normally be on the GroupBuy sites through their website. No, good call. They're really, really nice, actually. I don't have any of them myself, but their version of the Goonies is very, very cool.
The hard thing is they don't put out too much, so it's always nice when they put out something, but man, I would just love to see them explode. And again, I'd love to see some more of these types of companies come to the States, come to the UK, come closer. we all want you.
For all of us, it'd be nice to shave on shipping costs, but I think thankfully we're now in a place where the world feels like it's a lot smaller than it ever has been, as far as so easy for part of how we are able to connect when we live at other sides of the world, and it's never been easier to kind of to ship things back and forth, really. And
it's true.
And as much as the pandemic's definitely made shipping a bit more expensive, I'm confident that will slowly come back down over the next couple of years. And because we're not with Writer's Odyssey size box sets to one side, Blu-rays aren't the heaviest thing in the world, thankfully. So shipping costs are not too exorbitant, and it's great. I would love to have. I'm probably very spoiled because I have Eureka and 88 Films and Arrow and stuff on my doorstep, but I think so much of my stuff comes across from Asia, so I feel you on the shipping for the international side of things, but I'm just grateful that we can jump onto our website and get our Nova Media, get our Kimchi DVDs. So it's just it's good for what is still a relatively small community. I think there's maybe only a few thousand of us doing this dance in the world now, really, when there's 2-3 million subscribers to Disney Plus. Netflix. We're a drop in the ocean. So the fact that we still have such a good chunk of labels kind of catering to us and our eclectic and geeky tastes is a wonderful thing.
And that's not to sound like it's entitled or anything like that, but there's options, and we are genuinely spoiled nowadays. But on the other hand, it is still a very small market, so I would say make sure you're supporting where you want to support, getting the titles that you want, and doing it responsibly in a way that can keep this hobby alive, because it is. I mean, they've been ringing that death knell for 15 years or whatever, but it's still here, and it's not going to be here for forever.
No, but I think I'm confident we've still got another good 5-10 years left in it. I hope.
At least.
Yeah, I think so.
At least.
I think so. And it'd be interesting to kind of see. I don't think 4K is going to completely replace Blu-ray. I think they'll going to run parallel. So some releases we're going to see in 4K. I don't know if we'll make it to 8K as a medium. We'll have to see. But
yeah, we can talk about that some other time, I'm sure. I don't think we'll ever see 8K in home video. I mean, to be frank, DVD technically still hasn't even passed VHS for a lot of titles. So there's a lot that is still available, but then the rights and the elements are the biggest issues nowadays, because
we're not in DVDs.
Right. We're not going to get a 4K of something with just a VHS rip, because it would be pointless.
Yeah.
And a lot of these older titles, they were never archived properly, and that's why this is so important.
Yeah, I quite agree, and particularly with, I mean, obviously my big forte is stuff that's kind of coming out of Asia, and particularly out of Hong Kong. And Hong Kong did such a truly awful job of kind of really of not just restoration, but of just having prints in some way archived in a way that they were going to last. And I could send you pictures from the Shaw Brothers studio that would break your heart, of tins of film just rusting, basically just left, and it's pretty tragic. So the fact that we are able to kind of eke out good copies of these and sort of remaster them in some ways as a new type of archival is a wonderful thing. It's good.
I agree. Other than YouTube, is there anywhere that you would send everybody to follow you?
Not really. I mean, I think those that already follow my channel, I write the Blu-ray section for the Eastern Heroes, or the relaunch of the Eastern Heroes magazine, which kind of comes out when it comes out. We're not, or Rick's not kind of that regular. It's not a monthly thing, which I think is good that it's not, because it's quite an expensive publication, because it's an old school magazine, the way you used to buy when you were a kid. So it's, I think, nice to kind of have something that you can sit down with a cup of tea and not look at a screen and go through. And so it's very much a labor of love. I don't get paid to do that at all, but I really enjoy and get a kick out of just putting together a cluster of films that can go into that. But for those that don't want to buy the magazine, I always do a breakdown of whichever issue. I'll kind of flip through it on the channel and make a video for that. So my channel's my main place, really. And Instagram I'm on, but don't post to it that often. So yeah, if you're interested.
All right. Links are in the description below for Fanatical. Thank you so much for your time. And I know it's very late where you are right now, so I appreciate it.
You got me at a good time. It is now just like perfect cup of tea supper time now. So.
Perfect. Please, by all means, please come back on again, because I really enjoyed chatting with you.
We'll do a part 2 of this, and we'll pick a few different labels, because there's so many. To do you know so much more about Vinegar Syndrome than I do, and I've just started dipping my toe into that world, and I'm waiting for my copy of Right and Wrongs and The Bees and Cloak and Dagger, I think, to arrive.
Nice. I'll warn you now, The Bees is not great, but
it's John Saxon, and
it's
I like
fun still.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, thanks for watching. We'll catch you next time. Have a good one.
Thank you, buddy. We'll speak soon.